Welcome to the Council of Better Business Bureau's podcast, The Bistro, where we will discuss today's hottest consumer trends, predict the future with consumer experts, and learn how elite businesses and entrepreneurs continue to push the envelope in today's marketplace.
Hello and welcome to The Bistro. Thank you for joining us. For the Better Business Bureau, I'm your host, Elaine Espinola. Artificial intelligence has been changing the lives of humans for decades, but never has AI felt more ubiquitous than now. It seems as though not a week passes with yet another AI system overcoming an unprecedented hurdle or outperforming humans. Here to share exciting insight on the future with artificial intelligence is Craig Rhinehart, Director, IBM Watson Health Innovation and Market Development. Welcome to the Bistro, Craig. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Elaine, and what a great introduction. It's an exciting time for sure.
Absolutely. So, Craig, talk to us about this new era of technology innovation, what some are calling the fourth industrial revolution or the age of intelligence.
Well, it's a good analogy because if you what's going to happen in the future, it's always good to look back at what happened in the past. And this is not the first time that a new technology has come along that's going to disrupt things or change things. Some for maybe the better and some for maybe some challenges. So, but it is a really good analogy. I mean, if you look back to the late 1700s, we had steam engines and agricultural changes and textiles and the invention of the railroads and the telegraph and that sort of stuff. And then about 100 years later, you had another one where we had mass production, electric power, telephone, the assembly line, and tabulating technologies, which is really sort of our first computers, things that counted stuff. Fast forward another 100 years, we have the information age, computers, silicon chips, electronics, video recording, programmable computers, networking, and eventually the internet. We're sort of on the tail end of that. And those technologies really relied on us to program them to do what we wanted them to do. This fourth one, and whether you consider it 4 or 3 or 2, whatever, it really doesn't matter. But this fourth one is perhaps going to be the most disruptive because it's the first one that's not about what we do or how we work. It's the first one that's really about us. It's a very human kind of thing because these AI or machine learning technologies, they work the same way and learn the same way that we as human beings do.
Right.
So it has a pretty big potential impact on us as people and us as a society as a whole.
That's right. Very big and very kind of hot topic and one we're really just trying to help understand and walk through for the everyday, American consumer. So what does all this mean specifically for the average consumer?
Well, the robots are certainly not going to come along and take all of our jobs. And that's sort of the negative doom and gloom that you hear if you're reading on this topic. And if you look back at the previous industrial revolutions, right, at every single one, new industries were created and rapid growth ensued. Fortunes were made, fortunes were lost. But most importantly, new jobs, higher value jobs were created. And yes, outmoded jobs, some were eliminated. But on the business side, new opportunities are created and will be created for large business and small businesses alike. Now, if you're an accountant or an auditor, you might want to be concerned and you might want to understand how these technologies are going to impact your profession. And we'll come back to that a little later on, I think. But it'll be a mixture of positive and negative. And, statistics show that machines will impact our profession, every profession in the next 2 decades. But think about it. When was the last time you called 411 or looked up a company in the yellow pages or went to a video store to rent a movie or called the phone company to get the weather, right? You don't do any of those things anymore. You're relying on a different technology to get the same information, the internet, in a much more responsive way.
Correct.
So net, this is real. It's already big. You need to understand how it will impact your career, your life, your family, and so forth.
And just like you mentioned, I think for the average person, they're no longer needing to perhaps call an accountant where they might be able to do some things on their own online and things like that and look up phone numbers and just find information kind of on their own.
Well, self-service, we have we're an instant gratification society. And we want things now. We used to be film took weeks to be developed to get our pictures back. That was no longer good enough. We had instant photography. That took, 60 seconds to get it. That was not good enough. Now we have digital on our phones. The key thing that you said there is when this technology is fully implemented, it's not going to replace humans. It's going to augment them. Mm-hmm. And that's a key thing.
Well, speaking of which, there are a lot of buzzwords going around. So can you help us explain the difference between artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, and then cognitive computing?
Yeah, sure. Artificial intelligence has some baggage associated with it, right? If you saw the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, it had to be from my generation for that, but or I, Robot more recently with Will Smith, right? I mean, there's sort of these disaster scenarios where the robots are going to kill us all and take the world over and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy. But because of that, I think cognitive computing is a more relevant term because it bounds it a little bit. And that's what it really is. It's computers that are more cognitive or human-like in the way that they work, not necessarily in that they're going to replace us. And then augmented intelligence, I think, is probably the most accurate term in terms of how it will really work. It will augment us. It will make us better. It will help us make decisions. Imagine just having an expert in your pocket anytime you wanted to call on one.
Sure. Well, speaking of this, are there any consumer concerns that people should be aware of in terms of the AI products and services in relation to, for example, their personal data or identification security?
Well, no more so than what they already have to worry about. I mean, bottom line is we all need to be responsible, have good personal practices around password management, security, what we share, what we choose not to share, and so on and so forth. This won't add to that. It won't take away from that. It won't make it any easier or harder.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about job security because that is one of the things that most people just kind of think about. And you kind of touched upon that, which is that they don't really need to worry about it, but they should be aware and maybe kind of figure out what's going on and kind of make adjustments, as need be, correct?
Exactly. I mean, like the previous revolutions, again, we look back to get a feel for what's going to happen. It's going to be good and there's going to be upside, downside, that sort of thing. People who stay in the dark, don't take action, make the ostrich maneuver, right? They're always going to be at risk in any situation of being caught up in circumstances outside of their control. And then there's another group of people who seize the opportunity, that, and it can catapult them forward, both professionally or personally. This is one of those times where both are in play. And, and the good news here is this is not, even though a lot of the early adoption is happening now, right, this is going to have a long tail. So there's plenty of time to take action.
Okay. So can you share with us...
Go ahead. One more thought on that.
Sure.
I wanted to go back to the accountant comment I made earlier, because jobs, roles, or businesses that are repetitive in nature and are information intensive are the ones that are most likely to be impacted in the near term. And that sort of ties back to my earlier comment. But the reality is all roles will be enhanced or benefited from or augmented by these technologies as we go down that road.
Okay. Can you share some examples of AI products and services that are on the market today and how they enhance the consumer experience?
Okay, well, this might be a little out there, but imagine if your car could monitor your health and you have a personal emergency as you're driving down the road, and your car could call your doctors, transmit all your clinical information. In the case of an emergency, your car could then self-drive you to that medical facility where the doctors are already prepared and prepped to take care of you. Your insurance claim has been pre-approved and your family has been notified. And then finally, of course, when it's time to leave, your car could self-drive you home, stop at the pharmacy, pick up your prescriptions, all without you having to lift a finger. Now, it may seem a little far-fetched, but what you've got there is multiple systems that are benefiting from these kind of technologies and that are collaborating in what amounts to a process, if you will, to automate these kinds of things. I mean, it's not all that far-fetched. We have self-driving vehicles today. We have electronic medical records today. We have a lot of these things today, computers that you can talk to and can talk back to you.
Well, when I was little, it was called the Jetsons. But it sounds like maybe this is kind of coming. So very fascinating.
Well, and it's not that far-fetched, right? Some of the obvious consumer products that are in the market today, to directly answer your question, I didn't mean to duck it.
Sure.
Self-driving vehicles, other forms of transportation, boats, drones, medical treatment advisors or apps, including veterinary and behavioral health, mental health kinds of tools, legal case law and precedent advisors and apps, educational tutoring, automatic grading. These are all things that exist today. Maybe some not so obvious culinary and mixology, food, wine, drink recommenders, advisors, recipes, apparel, fashion, and design advisors. I mean, these are things that when you think about them are just ways of putting things together, and some of it's more scientific than it might appear. Real estate, gaming, sports, coaching advisors, these are all things that are, there's so much money being invested in this space right now. It's really quite amazing.
Sure. Now, something like I have in my house, which is Alexa, that would be a form of the artificial intelligence, right? My kids are asking it questions and she's answering. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's really sort of two pieces to it in a way. One is sort of how that we interact with a machine, which is what you're doing through Alexa. And then the second piece of it is how smart is the back end so that it really does get you the information that you're looking for. And some of those systems are better than others.
Okay, well, speaking of systems, tell us about the evolution of Watson, the question-answering computer system developed by IBM.
Well, IBM has a long history of taking on these sort of grand challenges. And first it was chess. It was originally thought that no human could be beat by a machine at chess. And eventually that happened in 1997. IBM had a computer that was built and beat Garry Kasparov, who was the reigning champion. And that kind of set the stage for Watson. In 2011, we did Jeopardy, and that was where the Watson computer beat the Jeopardy best grand champions of the day. And if you think about it, chess is a game of rules and math. Jeopardy is a game of words and complexity. Even the questions are designed to confuse you. So having a computer that could parse all that language and give you back confidence-based suggestions for how to answer the question was really pretty breakthrough at the time. And since then, we've taken it into other industries. We've, medical, an oncology solution, and other solutions. A number of medical partners, including Medtronic, CVS, Johnson & Johnson, Memorial Sloan Kettering, who have taken that core technology and extended it into specific areas. Genomics, education, toys. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really amazing.
It is amazing. Let's talk about that health, for example. IBM Watson Health. How does it help engage consumers and enable effective care?
Right. Well, our first solution, and the one that's really is transforming healthcare today, is Watson for Oncology, and it's an expert system that really makes personalized treatment recommendations based on medical evidence, not based on someone's experience and bias. So it's looking at all of the medical evidence, all of the clinical trials that might be available, and using that as a way to assist doctors in making treatment decisions. When you consider that there's something like 8,000 new medical journal articles published every day. I may have that number wrong, but it's in that neighborhood. But the point is that if you're a doctor, there's not enough hours in a day to read all the stuff you're supposed to read, know it, apply it, and actually practice medicine.
That's right.
It's a huge problem. So this kind of technology is enormously valuable in those augmented intelligence kind of scenarios.
Sure. And so where is the future of healthcare going with advancements in cognitive computing? Specifically, just to expand upon how it will help doctors treat patients.
Well, assisting doctors in situations, I think, is you're going to continue to see this. Where you're going to see is in new areas. There's not a lot of this kind of stuff in behavioral and mental health, as an example, where there's a real void of medical evidence as compared to traditional physical health-based diagnosis and treatment. So you're going to see more and more different areas where, again, that are information intensive, where we need to make decisions. That's kind of the sweet spot.
Sure. Well, gosh, I feel like we could talk about this forever because this is so fascinating. To wrap it all up, Craig, what is the top point that you want listeners to take away from this conversation on artificial intelligence?
Well, I'll piggyback on what I said earlier. We have sort of plenty of time to figure out what to do with this. This technology is being democratized. So it's not the world of gurus and, people can get smart about this. And, there's a lot more sort of do-it-yourself component to it. So my advice is, right, if you don't do anything and you get caught flat-footed, then that's on you. There's an enormous opportunity both personally and professionally here to better ourselves as a society, as individuals. And there's an entrepreneurship opportunity. That is, there's so much money being spent in this space and such a need for these technologies that entrepreneurs are drawn to it like magnets. And that's where I'm choosing to spend my time. I retire from IBM in July, and I'm going to go back to my startup and small business roots and work with entrepreneurs and others to help realize some of these ideas into actual solutions. So I'm pretty jazzed about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for you. And speaking of which, how can people find more information about you, about what you do, about artificial intelligence and the things we talked about today?
Well, I blog and speak about this stuff. So you can certainly find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or at my website and blog, which is CraigRhinehart.com. CraigRhinehart.com. And of course, any information on IBM solutions or our partner solutions can be found on IBM.com.
Craig, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today on The Bistro.
Thanks, Elaine. I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk about this. It certainly is an exciting time, and I'd challenge everyone out there to look into this more.
The Better Business Bureau is deeply committed to building and advancing a better marketplace, a trusted marketplace for all, because trust always matters. For the Better Business Bureau, and as the host of The Bistro, I'm Elaine Espinola, and I thank you for listening, and I encourage you to give us your feedback on this episode. Until next time, it's been my pleasure discussing better business with you.
You just enjoyed the Bistro podcast. Be sure to tune in next month for a brand new episode. To learn more about our other shows, visit betterbusiness.blueberry.com. That's betterbusiness.blueberry.com and subscribe. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are the views and opinions of the guests, not those of the Better Business Bureau, Council of Better Business Bureaus, or program affiliates. This podcast is for information and educational purposes only and is copyrighted with all rights reserved. This podcast is protected by Blueberry's Terms of Service.